The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you.
When the days drew near for Jesus to be received up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers ahead of him, who went and entered the village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But the people would not receive him, because his face was set towards Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to bid fire come down from heaven and consume them?" But he turned and rebuked them. And they went on to another village. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
We are very familiar with the name Vincent de Paul because his spirit has lived on in the church in a remarkable way through the work of a layman, Frederick Osnam, who is now himself Blessed Frederick Osnam. And the name Vincent de Paul is associated forever now with the work for the poor. And he has therefore a message for us who are surrounded with poor people. Love and compassion for the poor dominated his adult life. He had a pretty rough beginning, but when he eventually settled down, he manifested a simplicity that could only come from God. He manifested a humility which was like the humility of Jesus. Not maybe coming from his experiences early in his life, but he was always given to plain speaking, plain writing, and plain praying. There was nothing kind of fancy and sophisticated about him. But perhaps his best known characteristic is his gentleness. His gentleness with the poor, his gentleness with his neighbor, his gentleness with his brothers and sisters in religious life. He founded a congregation called the Vincentians, congregation of the mission, and the Daughters of Charity. I don't suppose many of you will remember the Daughters of Charity in their old outfit. We always knew them as butterfly nuns, that enormous dress that they took from Brittany with these enormous wings up here. And they became like a kind of model of nuns, and photographed all over the place because of their exotic habits. Vincent himself was a man of great restraint, discipline, and sharing. And the zeal that he had for the poor extended to poor priests. I remember when I was hitchhiking around France many, many years ago, I stayed with the priest. The two of us hitchhiking, we went to this presbytery and we stayed with this priest for a couple of days. And he was the poorest person I had ever met. His house was poor, his lodging, everything about him was desperately poor. And we were embarrassed even to be looking for help and somewhere to sleep and something to eat. So there were very many poor priests, but there were also many priests in France at the time of Vincent, who were poor in spirit in the sense of they were very lax or very much given to the fancy life. And so he made it a parallel mission to the poor and to the training of priests. And towards the end of his life, he wanted to include training of bishops as well, because he had a good insight into what was going on. And one thing that endears him to me, which I only found out, I thought I knew a lot about Vincent, having read his life a few times and working with Vincent de Paul, I discovered recently that he had a great fondness for Ireland, because at that time Ireland was being persecuted, literally, by a dreadful man called Oliver Cromwell. And so one of the first places he sent his new missionaries, the congregation of the mission, was to Ireland to support the Catholics who were being persecuted in a very vicious way. So we thank God for Vincent's gift to the church and his gift to us, helping us to focus on the essentials of the gospel, the love of God and the love of our neighbour, particularly those in need. St. Vincent de Paul, pray for us.